Call to action. The dissenting opinion of Justice Scalia in the same-sex marriage case is one of his greatest accomplishments, and is nothing less than a call to action. Today I submit to you that I have received the confirmation of the call to action from the late Justice Scalia after his death. Allow me to explain how I received the confirmation and what we must do now. My name is Elmore Richmond Jr. I'm a prophet of God in the name of Jesus. Many of you do not believe that God has prophets today, but I know who I am. God showed me 9/11 before it happened. I wrote President George W. Bush 13 times, and all revelation have come to pass. I've written President Barack Obama over 20 times, and the revelations keep coming. Today, however, I'm here to share with you this call for action that God had put in the heart of Justice Scalia, and I will share with you how I receive it, the confirmation of it, and I will outline what we must do as a people who love both God and country. Moreover, I will also share a revelation that would happen of an event that would happen here in the United States, just to show you that God has sent me. Prior to the death of Justice Scalia, I owned and knew that he was a member of the Supreme Court. I knew nothing about him. I had never read a dissenting opinion from a justice on the Supreme Court. Moreover, I had never read a complete case file of the Supreme Court. Today, I can say that I read all 103 pages of this case. I studied the case, and on February 17, 2016, I completed a report to the nation of my finding and a call for action, and I posted on the web. I'm happy to report to the nation today that we can restore God's institution of marriage back to America. Truly, Justice Scalia knew this. However, as a member of the court, the only official things that he could do was to write his dissenting opinion. Now, what compelled me to take this action? When I first heard about the death of Justice Scalia, it was breaking news on CNN. The first thing I did after I heard about his death, I went to the internet to discover more about him. The first thing I noticed was his full dissenting opinion of the same-sex marriage case. I read the full dissenting opinion. I was shocked and deeply troubled. I discovered that Justice Scalia questioned the constitutionality of the court decision. Next, I made a quick scan of the case file. I shared a link with my friends on Facebook. Before I retired for the night, I prayed to God in the name of Jesus to order my steps, to show me as to what to come, to keep me from evil, and to lead me into all truth, and to use me to do His will in the name of Jesus. I had a dream about my late brother, Pastor Robert Lee Richmond, who died last year. He gave me a telephone. The next word I heard were, "This is Scalia." I said, "Who?" He said, "This is Scalia." And I answered again, "Who?" He said, "Scalia." I did not wake up immediately from the dream. However, the next thing I noticed, I was near my car, getting ready to enter my car. There was two women that was there. They were selling clothes, female clothes in bags. And I told them that I was not interested in buying anything. And I proceeded to bag my car out the drive. When I looked across the street, there was a woman sitting on the perch, and she gave one of the women instructions. And then I look ahead, and I see at a storm drain, and water rushing out of the storm drain, and it was being forced out with a powerful hose. Then I look across the street, and I saw a wall of water coming between the houses in my direction, and I began to back up my car. There was no warning, and there was many homes in the path of this destruction. On Sunday, February 14, 2016, I read the entire ruling of the court case on the same-sex marriage. On February 15, 2016, I studied the case and then prepared this work. What compelled me to do so, you may ask? Now let me answer your question. God sent me. The late Justice Scalia dissenting opinion is a call to action. God loves America. Marriage is an institution of God. Man does not have the power nor the authority to change God's institution of marriage. By the time some of you will see this video, the incident regarding the wall of water would already have happened. It will happen very shortly here in the United States of America. This is the way that you will know that God has sent me with this message. This is not my first experience of these revelations from God. Before 9/11, I saw people running from a tall building that was aflame. And then there was waves and waves of military aircraft. I saw little Jessica in the fireman's arm before she fell into the well. I saw birds covered with oil before the spill of the Valdez. And I saw the rioting in Louisville, Kentucky before it ever occurred. And the list goes on. Full justice of the Supreme Court gave dissenting opinion in the case regarding the same-sex marriage. They questioned the constitutionality of the ruling made by the majority 5. Their arguments are compelling, and they should not be filed away, because what is at stake is whether or not the court is able to uphold the rule of law. Surely there is a vacancy that needs to be filled. However, the problem goes beyond filling the vacancy. Justice Alito explained the problem as evidence of deep and perhaps irremediable corruption of our legal cultural conception of constitution interpretation. However, the late Justice Scalia called the action of the majority 5 justice, Justice Poots. In plain talk, the late Justice Scalia alleged that these justices of the Supreme Court have secretly plotted to suddenly execute the overthrow of the government through the judicial process. This is a very serious allegation, and it should not be taken lightly. Justice Roberts concluded that the decision of the majority 5 had nothing to do with the Constitution. Justice Roberts made the following observation. I quote, "It most sensitive to the fact that judges are unelected and unaccountable, and that the legitimacy of their power depends on confining it to the exercise of legal judgment. It is more attuned to the lesson of history and what has meant for the country and the court when the justices have exceeded their proper bounds. And it is less pretentious than to suppose that while people around the world have viewed an institution in a particular way for thousands of years, the present generation and the present court are the ones chosen to burst the bond of history and tradition." Chief Justice Roberts concludes, the decision of the majority 5 had nothing to do with the Constitution. He states, "If you are among the many Americans of whatever sexual orientation who favor expanding same-sex marriage, by all means celebrate today's decisions. Celebrate the achievement of a desired goal. Celebrate the opportunity for a new expression of commitment to a partner. Celebrate the availability of new benefits. But do not celebrate the Constitution. It had nothing to do with it." Besides Chief Roberts' assertion, the 3 other justices with dissenting opinion reached the same conclusion. Surely this gives the Senate grounds to be concerned about the next appointment to the court by President Barack Obama. This allegation should bring concern to all Americans. The Supreme Court must not serve as a political extension of any party. The role of the Supreme Court is not to revise the Constitution. However, the late Justice Scalia claimed that the court engaged in constitutional revision by claiming power to grant liberties that the Constitution and its amendments neglected to mention. The late Justice Scalia claimed that the court had no basis for striking down a practice that is not expressly prohibited by the 14 Amendments text, and bears the endorsement of a long tradition of open, widespread, and unchallenged use dating back to the amendment ratification. The late Justice Scalia claimed that the system of government that make the people subordinate to a committee of 9 unelected lawyers does not deserve to be called a democracy. Let me repeat that. The late Justice Scalia claims that a system of government that make the people subordinate to a committee of 9 unelected lawyers does not deserve to be called a democracy. Here's a quote from the late Justice Scalia. Today's decree says that my ruler, you're talking about his ruler, and the ruler of 320 million Americans coast to coast, is a majority of 9 lawyers on the Supreme Court. The opinion in these cases is the fullest extension. In fact, in the fullest extension one can even imagine. The court can't claim power to create liberties that the Constitution and its amendments are neglected to mention. This practice of constitutional revision by an unelected committee of 9, always accomplished as it is today by extravagant praise of liberty, robs the people of the most important liberty they asserted in the Declaration of Independence and won in the Revolution of 1776, the freedom to govern themselves. The late Justice Scalia explained the composition of the court of 9 lawyers who studied at Yale or Harvard Law School did not contain one single Protestant of any denomination. He saw a need to point out the composition of the court, because the composition of the court did not represent the people of the United States. Here's another quote from the late Justice Scalia. And to allow the policy question of same-sex marriage to be considered and resolved by a select, partisan, highly unrepresented panel of 9 is a violation of a principle even more fundamental than on taxation without representation. No social transformation without representation. This is from the late Justice Scalia saying to the people, all 320 million people in the United States of America. He said no social transformation without representation. The late Justice Scalia declared, but what really astounds is the hubris reflected in today's judicial posts. Now what he says here, you have to understand this. He said that they were so arrogant in this process, in the way that they took charge with such arrogancy, exaggerated arrogancy, that they thought, that they believed that they can go on and change the Constitution of the United States of America and create a social transformation without the people representation. Justice Scalia studied this, and he called their action judicial push. And what he was saying is this, that these justices had plotted secretly to overthrow the government through the judicial process. This is something that you cannot take lightly. Here's a quote from Chief Justice Roberts that support his assertion. Although the policy argument to extend marriage to same-sex couples may be compelling, the legal argument for requiring search and extension are not. The fundamental rights to marry does not include the right to make a state change its definition of marriage. Chief Justice Roberts explained that the majority's decision is an act of will, not legal judgment. Here's a quote from Chief Justice Roberts. Supporters of same-sex marriage have achieved considerable success persuading their fellow citizens through the democratic process to adopt their view. That ends today. 5 lawyers have closed the debate and enacted their own vision of marriage as a matter of constitutional law. Stealing this issue from the people will, for many, cast a cloud over same-sex marriage, making a dramatic social change that much more difficult to accept. The majority's decision is an act of will and not legal judgment. The right is announced has no basis in the Constitution of this court proceeding. Understand well what this dissent is about. Now, this is your Chief Justice speaking. It's not about whether, in my judgment, the institution of marriage should be changed to include same-sex couples. It is instead about whether, in our democratic republic, the decision should rest with the people acting through their elected representative, or 5 lawyers who happen to hold commission authorizing them to resolve legal dispute according to law. The Constitution leaves no doubt about the answer. Now, this is the Chief Justice. In Justice Thomas' dissent, he states, our Constitution, like the Declaration of Independence before it, was predicated on a simple truth: one's liberty, not to mention one's dignity, was something to be shielded from, not provided by the state. Today's decision casts that truth aside. In its haste to reach a desired results, the majority misapplies a clause focused on due process to afford substantial right, disregard the most plausible understanding of the liberty protected by that clause, and distort the principle which this nation was founded. Its decision will have immiscible consequences for our Constitution and our society. Let's take another look of the implications of this ruling based on a comment that Justice Thomas made. He said, our Constitution, like the Declaration of Independence before it, predicated on a simple truth. One's liberty, not to mention one's dignity, was something to be shielded from, not provided by the state. What this ruling does, the state provides one dignity. In order for that to happen, what this means is that I must embrace someone else's immorality in order to give them dignity. In other words, we must dignify someone else's immorality in order to give them dignity. We must understand what had happened in this court decision today. In Justice Alito's dissenting opinion, he states, today's decision will also have a fundamental effect on the court in its ability to uphold the rule of law. We must understand this. Justice Alito also declared, today's decision shows that decades of attempt to restrain this court abuse of its authority have failed. The people deserve a judicial branch that does not legislate from the bench, but respect the rule of law to bring about sound judgment. Although ruling was made regarding same-sex marriage, thus declaring DOMA and other states' laws to be unconstitutional, it did not resolve the problem. Chief Roberts declares that a cloud has been cast over same-sex marriage. Consequently, the Supreme Court of the United States is not commissioned to create and impose such transformation. The late Justice Scalia, Chief Justice Roberts, Justice Thomas, and Justice Alito have done their part by offering their dissent. Now it's up to the people. The legislative branch is a separate and distinct branch of government. We cannot anticipate action that will be taken by the executive branch because he was in favor of such ruling. It's up to the people. Justice Scalia clearly pointed out in his dissenting opinion that the court does not control the people, but the people control the court. It's also clearly pointed out by Justice Roberts that the Constitution of the United States had nothing to do with the decision that was made by the majority of 5. We have to understand the people of the United States of America are the one who has power to turn this around. So there's something that we can do, but we have to take time out and understand what has been conveyed to us. And we must rise up to this call for action. It may cause us to go to Washington, D.C. and shut down the Supreme Court and compel them to cease all action until they get certain things in order. Then after that, come up with a plan that will ensure that the court over a period of time continue to make checks, to make a determination whether it's capable in dealing with the rule of law. And also there must be action taken, legislation passed to ensure that the court is not an extension of any political party. We as the people, we have work to do, but we have to understand it's we the people who have the power. What I have done, I post on the website, Revelation up to the minute, a complete text of the recommendation, a complete review of the case, and I invite you to visit the website. I also encourage you to read the complete case file and get the understanding as to what really being conveyed to us today. God loves America, and God wants to bless America. However, the leadership of these United States have caused God's people to err. Every branch of the government is corrupt. The President of the United States has demonstrated that he does not fear God. In the words of King David before he died, he said, if men rule over people, he must fear God. There's always consequences when you fail to fear God. The legislative branch, we have work to do. A nation divided against itself shall not stand. We say that we live in a democracy, a government that's for and by the people. In order for democracy to work, you must keep capitalism in check. We have failed to keep capitalism in check. Some refer to Senator Sanders as a socialist. But it's not about being a socialist. But what it really boils down to is to understand how the economic process should work. If the wealth is concentrated on the top and the dollar does not circulate amongst the people, where people are gainfully employed, receiving a living wage, and able to buy the things and participate in the economic process, and then more taxes are being generated through that process. President Johnson declared a war on poverty. But however, through the course of time, the process has been misunderstood. It was not about people on the dole. No, it was about people being gainfully employed, paid a living wage, where they could participate in the economic process, where the dollar can circulate through that process. We have to begin to take a look at this from a different vantage point. We, as the people of these United States, have to understand that we must keep capitalism in check to ensure that we have a government that's for and by the people. We have power to do this, but we have to wake up and understand what we must do now. I invite you to take a real look at this information that I posted on the web, Because if we come together and understand where we are within this nation, in order to receive the blessing of God, we have to fear God and understand where we receive our benefit from. The founding fathers, they recognize this. They recognize the laws of nature and nature God. And until we begin to understand that, as it's written in the Declaration of Independence, we'll continue to make error as we have done. We have an opportunity to turn this around. But it's going to take all of us with this type of understanding. Thanks God that we had someone to come before us as Justice Scalia. Because in his own way, he couldn't do it in any other way. In his dissenting opinion on the same-sex marriage case, he let the people know it's not the court who rule the people, but the people must rule the court. So therefore, it's the people's responsibility to take action now to turn this around. Yes, there's some things that we must do. The question is, the court, what it must do now? Let me just read a few of these recommendations before I conclude. The members of the Supreme Court must suspend their schedule on hearing any further case until they do the following. Engage in internal team building exercises that work through some of the serious cultural conception of the court interpretation. Moreover, every member of the court should take a self-examination and determine if they are fit to carry out their duty as members of the Supreme Court. One of the chief questions each justice should ask of himself or herself is, can I set aside my personal views on subjects that's very dear to me? Moreover, each justice should examine himself in regard to political loyalty to ensure that this is not a factor that interferes with them rendering sound judgment. The members of the Supreme Court, any member of the House, any member of the Senate, and the President of the United States of America should revisit the Declaration of Independence and see where we receive our entitlement from. The respect of laws of nature and nature God must be considered when entertaining marriage, an institution of God. Under the law of nature, man shall not lie down with a dog, a sheep, or another animal. Moreover, under laws of nature, man shall not lie down with another man as he would lie down with a woman. Surely when the laws of nature are considered, there should be no ground for approval of same-sex marriage. Surely this is a task for America to begin to look at this from a completely different vantage point. I make another recommendation. The members of the Supreme Court should not resume operation until after members have resigned, if there are some who find himself or herself to be unfit to continue, and the court has gained confidence that it can function as a body upholding the rule of law. Yes, there should be a vote within the court. If there are 9 members on the court, when they vote, it should be 9-0 to determine the fitness of the court. If there's one member who says, I don't believe the court is fit to uphold the rule of law, then there's still work must be done in the court until 100% of the members of the Supreme Court come up and say, yes, we are fit to uphold the rule of law. Then there should be no business in the court. They are not capable to operate. We have work to do. This is very serious business and a grave responsibility that has been entrusted in 9 individuals, 9 lawyers, who may not represent the people within these United States of America. Yes, as Justice Scalia pointed out, we the people rule the court. The court does not rule the people. So therefore, there must be a group of people that will come together to create certain criteria. And so Congress can enact law that will ensure that we have a healthy body of 9 justices that are capable of working together to uphold the rule of law. We have work to do. The members of the Senate and the House must take action, but we cannot anticipate the House of Representatives and the Senate to act without pressure from the people. So therefore the people must mobilize. The people must come together and go to Washington and organize in a way that will put pressure on the Supreme Court to help bring it back in check. So it will not be any question that it is a separate and a distinct branch of people understanding what they're there for. It's not for social transformation, but it is deal with upholding the rule of law. I invite you to visit the website revelationuptotheminute.org and read the full report. We have work to do. I love America. I know many of you love America. But we have to understand that we have to understand the way of the Lord. And once we understand the way of the Lord, then we can be more effective in doing the things that is pleasing to God, the Creator of mankind. Thank you for this opportunity to share with you today.